part of the internal method in the Chu Shong Tin. My presentation is going to be in two parts. Originally, it was just totally focused on Nim Tao, but you cannot talk about Nim Tao without talking about the lead up to the whole picture. First of all, what I'd like to do is just remind ourselves what is the objective of the Chu Shong Tin internal method. What exactly that we want to do that's so different from other people. And it's not just about power or speed or technique. What really boils down to is the ability to receive force from the opponent without being affected by that force. And by the same token, we need to be able to deliver force onto an opponent without being affected by our force. Because of Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you deliver force on your opponent and it doesn't move, that reaction comes back to you and you move and you lose your power. So that's the objective of our internal method. This is actually the fourth in a series of presentations I've given on the internal method. In the first talk that I gave back in July of last year, I concentrated on the general overview of the system. What does it involve? Starting from all the stages of development of the internal method, starting from standing practice. And from standing practice, we develop Nim Tao, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. And then from Nim Tao, we develop three abilities: awareness, intent, and relaxation. So most of you are familiar with the Sung part of it because we concentrate very heavily in Sung Wing Chun about it. In fact, our whole school is named after Sung, relaxation. I'll touch a bit about awareness and intent later on in the presentation. So that was the first talk that I gave back in July last year. In the second presentation I gave, I concentrated on the basic tools of the Chu Shong Tin method. This was back in October last year. And basically the basic tools of the internal method are the fundamental Sung actions. There is a very distinct concentration on relaxation or Sung in Cantonese. But Sung is not the relaxation that most people think about. Most people think about relaxation as either you relax or you're not. So when you're not, you're tense, and when you relax, you're neutral slow. That doesn't do anything for you. Relaxation or Sung, rather, is not a single entity. It's actually a continuum of states from almost nothing, emptiness, to solid. And all in between is still Sung. And if you watch Chu Shong Tin's video clips on YouTube, you see him mention a number of Sung actions from time to time. These are the 6 Sung actions that he used to teach in Hong Kong when we went to Hong Kong to train with him. The first of these is, I would say in Cantonese because he used Cantonese. Basically, this are his words. The first is Di. Di, translated loosely, means to sink, and that affects your muscles. When you send the proper signal to a muscle, it relaxes that muscle, and it feels as if it's melting away. So that's a muscle relaxation. Second one is form. Form is to release. That affects the joints. When you release the joints, the whole body settles. I'll rattle through it very quickly because I've covered this in previous presentations. The third of those Sung actions is Dan Hoi. Dan Hoi is to open the joint. That creates a solidness in the joint, and you can then transmit power through the joint much more effectively. The next one, number 4, is Jun. Jun means to rotate. Now, most people translate Jun as joint rotation, and you see that mentioned quite a lot in video clips on the Chu Shong Tin system. They talk about joint rotation, but it's not the ordinary joint rotation. I've demonstrated for a few people tonight, where when you release the joint, open it, and you rotate it in a certain way, the mass the effect of the mass will transfer across with that rotation. So it's the mass that's doing the rotation, and you're rotating actually a very small point. Finding that point is the crucial bit in the system. Sing, you hear it a lot with Chu Shong Tin. Sing is to rise up the spine. In the early days, we used to hear stories from Hong Kong before we went to train them about spirits rising up the spine, or some smoke coming up from the anus up into the all this is because of mistranslation. Nothing is actually rising up the spine. When you sing, what actually happens is that you're releasing the individual segments of the spine. And as each segment is released, there's a sensation as if it's going up the spine. But actually, it's the individual sequential release of each of the individual segments of the spine. When you release the spine up into your skull area, you stimulate an area of the mind that we now call Nim Tao. So that's related to Nim Tao. The purpose of singing is actually to release that muscular tension all the way up the spine into the brain stem, and in so doing trigger opening of Nim Tao. That's in the upward direction. In the opposite direction, going down the spine into the tailbone, that's called Se. Se means to slide down. So these 6 fundamental Sung actions comprise the Chu Shong Tin method. This is something that you will need to work towards again and again. So that was my third presentation. So that was my second presentation. In the third presentation in March of this year, I then talk about how to use these basic tools of the Chu Shong Tin method together with processes within your body. Because a lot of people think of the Chu Shong Tin method, especially when they start talking about Lim Ling, they think of it as some mystical mind force. It is not a mystical mind force. It's actually the ability to use the fundamental Sung actions that you develop, marry it up with the physiological processes in your body to create both movement and power. And the physiological processes which I covered last time are muscle contraction. That's a normal thing. Everybody knows that, using muscle. The next level is that when you become more expert at using muscle, you start to use structure. And structure is nothing more than creating a shape in your body. In our system, it's a circular shape. Aligning the body forces with that circular shape, and then putting a bit of leverage into it. So that's structure. And what structure gives you is that you use less muscle. You take advantage of this shape, alignment, and leverage to increase your power. And most people on our lineage is about that sort of level. And they're very good. They develop the structure to such an extent. They're very relaxed, they're very powerful. And it's strong, but only in the aligned direction. That's the only downside. It's very strong when you move in the aligned direction, but someone tilts you away from that, it's not so strong. As you become more adept in the Chu Shong Tin system, you start to use more of the tendons and ligaments. You use even less muscle. You rely on the tendons and ligaments to do most of the work. And that makes less muscle usage and also more elastic. Your body becomes more elastic. I think I'll demonstrate on you tonight, where we move together and bounce off of it using that. And then from there, you start moving from the center, from down here. I think I demonstrated on you, moving from the center. Just to show that when you stop moving from up here, using the local muscle, and you start moving from lower down by relaxing down into the waist area, your power is much more difficult for somebody to stop because it's indirect. And at the contact point, you feel reasonably soft, light, and sometimes even empty, as if there's no force there at all. This is where the no force theory comes from in our children's system, because at the point of contact, people can't feel the force there. The force, there is actually force, but it's coming indirectly from much lower down into the structure. And finally, if you achieve Nim Tao and reach the sort of connection there, you use the neural connection from that part of your brain and mind directly to different parts of your body. And by doing so, you find what we call the right line of action. And you can see in a lot of the video clips on YouTube where Chu Shong Tin is setting up some of the students like Nima and Zep. And you see them struggling initially. And then somehow, Chu Shong Tin managed to trigger the mindset there. And they find the right direction of movement. It's like a light bulb lights up and it suddenly moves. That's what it is. They found the right line of action. When you find the right line of action, you can move freely. And even then, there's no power. You just free the movement. The power comes from you releasing the mass from here, the center, down into the movement line to increase the delivery power. So that quickly runs through the three presentations I gave earlier. And that brings me quite neatly down to tonight's main feature, which is Nim Tao. Well, to talk about Nim Tao, we need to answer three questions. What is Nim Tao? What does it do? And more importantly, how do you do it? I could give my own interpretation of Nim Tao, but I feel that the better way would be to find answers from what Chu Shong Tin used to teach in his school. Either talk to me directly or to general students there. And over the years that I've gone to Hong Kong to train here, there are 4 different definitions that's given to Nim Tao. Each of those definitions gives you an additional insight into what it is. The first definition that Chu Shong Tin used to give us about what is Nim Tao. Nim Tao is that part of the mind that does not deal with the day-to-day activity. In other words, it's not the conscious mind, because your conscious mind is the day-to-day activity. It's got to be the subconscious mind. Now this is an important definition because straight away it gives you the location of where Nim Tao is. Not here, here. So it gives you a direction to start searching for it, to find out where it is, because otherwise you could be searching blindly. So the first definition is very important in the sense that it tells you where Nim Tao is located, in the back of the brain, where the subconscious mind normally resides. And in his sort of day-to-day sort of teaching, he did confirm that it is a subconscious ability. Now, Nim Tao is about an ability that comes from the subconscious mind. So that tells you what Nim Tao is. Next question, what does it do? The answer to that question, what does it do, comes from 2 other definitions that Chu Shong Tin has given over a period of time. The first of those definitions is that, and this is something he actually told me himself directly, think of Nim Tao as the main switch in your mind, that when you switch it on, it lights up the location of all the other little switches in your body. So when you trigger Nim Tao through standing practice, that's what happens. It's like a main switch switching on in your brain. That doesn't do that much for you, but it does give you visibility of the rest of the areas that you need to trigger, all the other switches that you need to work now to get lit up in your body. So this main switch, when it's light up, it enables awareness of parts of your body that are ordinarily under subconscious control. So in other words, you and I, if you're not training yet, you can't see them. It's not visible to your mind at all. You do not know it exists. Because it's a subconscious area. All of us, we carry around with us on our body a lot of tension that is not necessary to our day-to-day living. This tension is built up over your lifetime. through those of you who work on computers. You just set it all day on the computer, bend it, and you build up tension as a result. Then when you stand up, you feel achy. That's tension in your body. You build it up. Now the funny thing about bodies and the mind is that if you do something long enough and often enough, that activity gets subsumed into your subconscious mind and you lose visibility of it. You become unaware of it. The problem is that we can only change things if we become aware of it. If you're not aware of something, you cannot change. And that's the funny thing about our system. When we make you aware of this tension, you actually feel very uncomfortable. Because previously, you're not aware of it, you don't even feel it, so you think, right, I'm relaxed. When you become aware of this additional tension, everything hurts. And you think, I've actually gone backwards. And this is the reason some of you feel that sometimes it's not working for you, that actually the amount of standing you do is making things worse. You feel aches in areas of the body you didn't even knew existed before. This is the reason, because as you become more aware subconsciously, you are now feeling those areas that previously you were unaware of. So that's the first definition that gives you an indication of what does Nim Tao do. The second definition that Chu Shong Tin gave about what Nim does. Now I have to say that he doesn't give this definition very often. I've only heard it twice in all the years of it. And usually late at night, when very few people are around. He talks of Nim Tao as a mind map. To him, he's got this map in his mind at the back here. And in that map is the location of every part of his body. He knows exactly where every part of the body is from that map. And the connection from that point in his mind to that part. And what he found, and this is something that he experimented himself, because when he first tried to figure out where does my power come from, he started actually feeling, when he activates some part of the body, he actually feel where that thought was coming from. And he found that different parts of the mind control different parts of the body. For example, this part here, if I activate that, and that's all, mentally touches it, it sends a signal directly down my spine and activates the tailbone. On the internet, you've heard all the stories about Taigong, the tailbone going down. That is in the beginning. If you activate here, the signal goes directly from here to the tailbone and it goes right down. So you don't need to do Taigong so much anymore. You can actually activate the signal directly from the top of your mind. And this is not imagination, because there are distinct locations where you think a particular thought and it produces a physical manifestation in your body. It has to be a physical manifestation. A lot of people think mind force is all about mind, so I can stand here and actually get them to fall down dead, without having to touch it. I asked Chu Shong Tin that actually, it doesn't work, you try it. You've got to touch somebody. And basically, you've got to have a physical manifestation first in your own body, and that physical manifestation that affects the other body. And finally, what the mind map does is that it enables you to know this right line of action that I talked about earlier. Remember I mentioned about people are being set up by Chu Shong Tin, and then suddenly, as if some light comes on in the eye, they suddenly can see where they're supposed to be going, and they move. This is where it comes from, this mind map, knowing the right line of action. So that deals with what does Nim Tao do. Now, the $64 million question, how does it do it? Chu Shong Tin actually has a little story that he relates about Nim Tao. Most of you know that his teaching career spanned 60 years. In the beginning, he puzzled about two things. The first thing he puzzled about, why was the first form called Zero Tao? I don't know how much you know about Chinese Kung Fu, the traditional Chinese Kung Fu. In traditional Chinese Kung Fu, all the forms are very fantastic names, like tiger coming down the mountain, tiger tears your heart out and your lungs out, something like that, something fierce and martial-like. But in our Wing Chun system, the first form is called Nim Tao. It's the idea. It's not very aggressive, is it? It's not very martial. So why is it called Nim Tao? The second thing he puzzled about was, where did his power come from? He couldn't, at the beginning, he couldn't teach it to a student. He set them up, they could do it, and then he walked away and they couldn't do it anymore. So he said, where did his power come from? Why did he have it and the other people don't have it? So he started experimenting. He said, whenever I did this, I started feeling his thought was it. And then eventually found that it actually comes from this part of his head. And this is where the subconscious mind was. So he added 2 and 2 together, and he thought, this is where my power comes from. That's why the founders of Wing Chun called the first form Nim Tao, because the power comes from the Nim Tao. So this is his story about what Nim Tao is. But he did admit that actually the name Nim Tao is not very helpful, because it doesn't mean much. If you were to people tell you, use your Nim Tao, how do I use it? How do I actually make it work? It's not a very useful term. He said, quite openly, and it's on record, he did a DVD in 2001, if you can buy it, and in the introductory he mentioned that. He said that he found out later on, when he became more knowledgeable about where his power came from, it would have been better to call Nim Tao, instead of Nim Tao, call it Yi Sei, which is Cantonese for Yi is the intent, Sei is the process. So it's the process of using the intent. I say, if he had called it that, people would have understood it a lot better, because the process of using the intent is actually quite a well-known and accepted methodology in internal Kung Fu, in Chinese sort of martial arts. So if you had used the name Yi Sei, then things will become a lot clearer. Basically, you use the intent and Yi intent is the communication between the conscious and subconscious mind. So that's your answer. That's what Nim Tao is. It's the process of using intent to communicate between the conscious and the subconscious mind. Once you can communicate between the two, you can find the right line of action. Once you can find the right line of action, you can move freely. Your joints are free to move. You can release any pressure that comes into your body, and therefore you satisfy that objective of the Chu Shong Tin method. You are not affected by when you receive the power from your opponent. And equally, when you find the right line of movement or action, you're not affected by delivering your power onto your opponent. So now that we know how to do it, this is the progression of Nim Tao action. First of all, you develop awareness. When you have awareness, it lights up in your mind, this mind map, what is needed. You apply the Yi to follow this awareness, because this mind map tells you where the problem is. The Yi sends a signal to the problem area, and when you send this signal to the affected area, Sung, or relaxation, follows the signal. So you've got a tension built up when someone applies a force to you. Yi sends a signal to that part affected, that your mind map tells you where it is. It releases the pressure there. I give a Chinese name for that, it's San. And then it forms a connection. And that connection reveals the right line of action. Chu Shong Tin is called Lo Xin. Lo Xin means the pathway or the roadway. That's the right line of action. So basically, you receive the force, you neutralize it by releasing the pressure, you connect up all the different parts of your body. The mind map tells you what to do, and you follow that line and you move. That's the secret of Chu Shong Tin internal method. Any questions?
And that happens in a split second to him, you know what I mean? It's happened, it probably...
Well, when you first train it, you've got to do it slowly. I always advise people that if you find that you cannot do something, stop, slow right down, and move very slowly. Because when you move fast, you can hide a lot of mistakes. When you move slowly, it either works or it doesn't work. It can only work if you do it correctly. So whenever you meet any problem with moving something or doing something, start moving slow and find out where you're being locked up. Try and send a signal there to release that lock. And then when you release it, you find that you can move again. And once you can move, the power comes from three sources. The physiological processes in your body combined together with your mass and the mass of planet. And you just dump that mass into the line of action, and here presto. Can I borrow you from you? Just to do an illustration. So if you all see me there, if it presses down my arm and I use locomotive and just push down here, push right down. If I use this muscle, it's very difficult for me to actually bear the load because I'm using muscle action, and he's younger man than I am. I'm just an old geezer. He's younger, fitter, I'm out of shape. But if I, first of all, take that pressure, the point of contact, push more than me. Yeah, that's it, now you're affecting me. Okay. So now I take that pressure, I release that into my elbow, you see that? Release that to my shoulder, to my scapula, across to my spine, release the spine, down into tailbone, yeah. Tailbone, across to the hip, and down, in this case, so down the right hip, joint, into the right knee, into the foot. So now you press harder, you're pressing my foot. Okay? So if you press to make the connection, so release the pressure, make the connection. Now I'm going to take that line and I'm going to touch it. So that's the right line of action. So that's just the line of action movement, no power. You can see that I actually did. Now I'm going to do the same thing, take that, across back into here. This time I'm going to touch him, but when I touch him, I'm going to drop my mask into him as well. So that's the power. So Nim Tao, release, connect, deliver. This is where the mystical force comes from. It's not mystical at all. It's your body mass together with a physiological process that you can manipulate. Initially, trying to do it with your conscious mind, but it's difficult because a lot of your body is actually controlled by subconscious mind. But when you have the subconscious mind ability, you create this mind map in the right part of the mind, and the main switch flips up and you can see the rest of the body. You just connect it and then deliver it back out. Make sense? The other thing is that with the Yi, once you establish that basic function, Chu Shong Tin said this is actually very basic, just to be beginning. Once you learn that methodology, you can play around because remember it's called, if you had a way of it, they would call it Yi. That means the process of using the Yi. So now we're able to play around with the Yi now. To somebody else. So if you push it now, yeah, you take your center and push into my center. Yeah, he's younger than me, there's no way to push me back because my Yi is on my center of my body and I'm pushing back center. But feel it when now, if I create a pathway, if I sung, release. And as he increases power, I put my ear, find out where the find out where the connection to him was. And the connection was, if I just do the connection was that when he used to center the Buddha, now he said, I cannot hold it because he's younger, fitter, and stronger than me. But because when we connect, we merge together from two bodies into a single body, there is now a common center between the two of us. The mind map in my mind becomes aware where the common center. I put my yi there, and I now move from there, which is here. He suddenly loses his power. Okay, so that's playing around with me. I took somebody else. Now he's actually quite good because he's got lots of muscle here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and press him down using muscle. Now you can see straight away that there's no way I can win against him. It's got solid muscle here. So if I press that, there's no chance. And if I try and rotate, you can feel that there's a big lump of muscle there, isn't it? Okay. But feel this when I change it. Different, isn't it? Because what I did was that in the first instance, I was just using ordinary muscle pressure. Now, as I try to bring this arm down, the awareness kicks in, lines up where I'm being tense up, which is here. It's pushing in. See? That's where I'm tense. First thing I release the tension, I release here, so that I'm doing. Remember I mentioned that Sung is actually a continuum of states from almost nothing to a point, to the point there. Okay? Once at that point, I connect the right line there to the center. That's it. Can you feel that? Make the connection, I drop my mask into it. Okay? So that's playing around.
What I almost like the master to envelop round.
You can feel it even more. No, just push. Yeah. That's it, stop. If I use muscle here, there's no way I'm going to bring it down. I'm struggling. But feel it when now awareness kicks in. This is the part I'm stressing. You can feel that. Notice I didn't go like that. Quickly it was surprising. It was very slow. And if we do it even slower, you can feel the effects. This is the muscle. If I use one muscle, there's no way. It's too strong for me. It's all muscle. By using the key, by finding the right line direction, it suddenly makes it possible. Not calling any superpower, it just makes it much more easier for me to move against someone who is far superior to me in terms of youth, the age, in terms of physical strength, and in terms of fitness. He's very fit, he was running up and down, going up, and I'm tired already looking at him. So there's no way I can imagine physically. But mentally, with the right mindset, right manipulation of the physiological process in the body, you can make up for that disadvantage. But we're not going to cover everything in one night, so I thought unless maybe you've got any questions.
So a question, I felt at the point when I was sugaring, my actual body weight and my strength just became nothing at that point. When you said that point, I feel the tension in my body, but it's as if I was shoving against nothing, there's some force or just slightly transferring all my attention.
There are all sorts of ways to play it. From my side of the fence, what I felt was that initially when I was using muscle, I felt really a lot of stress. When I switch off the muscle bit when that switches on, the pressure just goes up. You just move.
Movement to energy is almost like 4 axes, machining and moving at the same time. It didn't go one way, it all come from various parts, you know what I mean? That's where
by the way, one thing I want to illustrate, sorry, I'll take a few more minutes. I mentioned about when you use structure, you use the shape and the alignment and the mechanical function. Could I borrow your pictures? Just so, doing what they did earlier. Press that's it. Once I'm connected, and the connection is made, you are no longer dependent on structure. You're not dependent on the shape. It can be any shape. You're not dependent on the alignment. I don't need to align myself. I can in fact align myself. As long as I release, take the pressure off. And that's all the main concern I have. Whatever you do to me, I don't care what he does. I only care that I don't feel stressed. So if I'm saying I feel stressed, let go of stress. That's the only thing I want to illustrate, that it is not dependent on structure. It's dependent on just finding where the right line is. Can you do it? Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.